I'm going to go ahead and assume that anyone watching this show is probably at least familiar with Penny Arcade, but you may not be immediately aware that its creators are also collaborating with Scott Kurtz of PvP on another webcomic called The Trenches, set in the thankless world of video game bug testers. In the strip, the hapless main characters have thus far had their testing efforts concentrated on a single game, a preposterously overdeveloped, mega-budgeted AAA revival of a fictional 1980s cartoon property called STARR. Obviously, the strip doesn't dwell on the specifics of this running joke, but what details we get are amusingly on-the-nose parodies of the conventions of the genre that aficionados will recognize immediately, especially if they remember the one kinda obscure series that it draws most of its inspiration from. Wait a second, MovieBob. I know that
TV is weird
and all that, but are you telling me there actually was a Lost Star? Well, kind of, yeah, but we called him Brave Star, Native American space cowboy protecting an Old West-themed alien world from evil using high-tech weaponry and magical animal powers. It never actually caught on like gangbusters during its original 1986 to 1988 TV run, even though it was heavily promoted with a tie-in line of action figures and a feature-length prequel movie that got a limited theatrical release. Today, it remains a cult item with a distinguished if dubious place in the history of Western animation, but we'll come back to that in a bit. Now, just for fun, let's see if we can get through the basic story setup with a straight face. Ahem. Our setting, the planet of New Texas, inhabited by a native population of anthropomorphic prairie dogs called the Prairie People, but colonized by a multi-species interplanetary government mostly for the mining of a rare mineral called carium. Both the colonists and the Prairie People are under constant threat of attack by a demonic entity called Stampede, who for some reason subcontracts his evil deeds to a gang of alien thugs led by the sinister yet wholly incompetent Tex Hex. For a time defended primarily by Deputy Fuzz and an action girl judge with a weaponized space-age gavel, the planet ultimately comes under the protection of Brave Star, a Native American galactic marshal who has learned to master ancient powers from a shaman named Shaman. His sidekick was 3030, a cyborg equestroid who could transform from a four-legged mount to a biped with a shotgun. Moreover, you know what, just cue up more of the theme song.
And one day a lawman appeared, with powers of Hawk, Wolf, Puma, and Bear. Protector of peace, mystic man from afar. Champion of justice, Marshal Brave Star.
Yeah, it was that kind of show. The kind where the bad guys had names like Cactus Head, Sandstorm, Hogtie, Vipra, or Dingo Dan. And why yes, there were life lessons repeated directly to the camera at the end of most episodes. Ah, the good old days. This was partially what makes the Trenches Lost Star gag so consistently spot on. Brave Star really does feel like an accidental self-parody of every 1980s cartoon cliche, right down to the hero's eyeball assault of a uniform. Animation fans will be able to tell right off the bat from the heavy use of recycled animation and the familiar heavy metal / Mobius-inspired art design that Brave Star was a Filmation cartoon, but animation historians can tell you that it was kinda the last Filmation cartoon, produced during the final wind-down of the company following the early 80s last hurrah it scored off the Masters of the Universe licenses, and wrapped shortly before they were purchased by L'Oreal and completely dismantled. That's right, Marshal Brave Star would end up being the last cartoon hero brought to life by the people responsible for He-Man, She-Ra, John Blackstar, the Groovy Ghoulies, the original Ghostbusters, and some of the most iconic versions of Captain Marvel and friends. But was it any good? Well, it had its moments. Fans of cartoons from this era have a habit of vastly overstating the quality of the better ones while simultaneously dismissing the others. Brave Star is definitely one for the others, but its problems are the same as almost every other show of its ilk. All the creativity went into the concept and designs, while the actual narrative was boilerplate and repetitive yet highly inconsistent. The action sci-fi foundation clashing with the more conventional cartoon logic most Western animators and animation writers were still more familiar with at the time, while the action itself was undercut by absurd 1980s censorship standards. And while the well-meaning progressiveness in establishing one of the surprisingly few Native American superheroes in contemporary popular culture is sincere and certainly worth noting, viewed through the miracle of hindsight, it's hard not to wince just a little at Brave Star's impossibly noble warrior ethos and the caricatured spirit animal mysticism, or that the show's thematic analog to the American West's indigenous people were a goofy race of animal bit players who required the intervention of friendly colonial newcomers. Probably the best way to view Brave Star, incidentally the entire series and movie have both been released released as a DVD in a few different forms over the years, other than as a spectacularly cheesy time capsule, is the clearest example of the way children's entertainment veterans like Filmation continually tried to adjust cowboys, adventurers, mythic heroes, and other go-to kiddie fair staples of their salad days to the Star Wars and comic book saturated youth culture of the 80s and 90s. Supposedly, Brave Star came about because Filmation co-founder Lou Scheimer liked the design of the character Tex Hex so much as part of the proposed Ghostbusters Rogues Gallery that he ordered the character removed from that lineup so that an entirely new show could be developed with him as the central antagonist. I don't know that anyone's life will be all that poorer for having never experienced Brave Star or understanding that much more of the joke behind Lost Star, but if you've browsed through all of the other better-known Generation X schlock nostalgia properties and want to find one that's just different enough, it's worth a look. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.